So this is probably the scariest thing that's ever happened in my entire life. I'm a 23-year-old female. I was about 3 or 4 years old when this all started, and somehow it's worked its way all the way up until a few months ago. A long con, if you will. It's not really anything to laugh about, though. My single mom was a school counselor in our small town. The entire school K through 12 probably had about 1,100 students. It's the everyone knows everyone kind of town, although we did have a unique last name. My mom quit counseling when I started kindergarten, and up until high school even, people would say, "Hey, wasn't your mom the school counselor?" Before she quit, there was a high school student who also happened to be our neighbor. We did live out in the country, so there were probably about 2 to 3 acres away from them, with woods in between the properties. But in the winter, we could see each other's houses with the leaves all gone. We weren't by any means close with our neighbors, and we lived far enough away that it's not like we'd see each other in the morning and wave hello or something. Slowly, after fall started, my mom noticed things around the house moving around, or pictures would be randomly turned upside down. She didn't really think anything of it, as she had me, a toddler, running around the house. That was really the only thing at first, and I vividly remember her sitting me down to ask if I had done these things, which I said I didn't because, of course, I hadn't. I actually remember a lot of my life around this time for some reason. I know a lot of people can't really remember their early childhood, though. More things started happening. More things started being moved around, but it was all deliberate now, like a book in the fridge, or a picture winding up in the bathroom sink. We had a housekeeper at the time, but she didn't see any of these things, and nothing was ever stolen. These things all happened during the day at some point, and even if they had happened at night, we were both extremely heavy sleepers, which is important. It was just after my birthday in February at this point. My mom knows that somehow someone has gotten a key to our house, so she decided to have the locks changed. She hadn't had time to get a new key to our housekeeper yet, so my mom told her to call when she was done cleaning, and my mom would return home from work and lock up the door. The housekeeper did just that, left, and my mom was there 5 minutes later. She went inside to use the restroom, and there was snow and water all over the bathroom floor, which would be ridiculous as to why the housekeeper had missed that. My mom knew someone had to be in the house. She shot upstairs when she heard the front door slam. She went to see if she could see anything through the windows, but she couldn't, and that's when she first suspected it could be our neighbor. A few days later, we woke up one morning. Also, I slept with my mom at this time, because I was really scared to sleep alone. The house had been completely broken into during the night. Someone had kicked in our porch door. Some of the snow had melted away, and it was starting to get muddy. There were dirty shoe prints all over the carpet. My mom called the police and my grandma to come pick me up. The issues eventually stopped while I was staying at my grandmother's. I didn't find this out until I was about 12, but in the end they ended up arresting our neighbor kid, who admitted to not only breaking into our house, but also climbing in through a window for about 6 months just to watch us sleep at night. He also copied a key and had been stealing both of our underwear. He was expelled from school and sent to juvenile detention, and was in and out of the system for years after he was an adult. He had a wife and kids at this point, and was living in a completely different town. I found all this out when I was 12 because he decided to move back into his parents' house again, and that's when things started to get a bit weird again. One night, someone would hit the sides of our house with a baseball bat, right under the second floor window where my mom and I were talking in our room with the light on. Immediately after, we heard someone get on a four-wheeler in our field and ride around. Some nights we would hear a chainsaw running in the field. We set up trail cameras, and my uncle had a stakeout to see if they could find anything. They heard some rustling in the woods one night and shot a gun up into the air. Not smart, I know, but relatively harmless in this scenario, to scare off whoever. It all stopped abruptly after about 6 weeks, though. We never got confirmation that it was the guy, but we all knew deep down. We haven't had any issues since, thankfully, other than the fact that he tried to add me on Snapchat a month or so ago. When I saw the notification, I felt my face drain immediately. So, stalker neighbor boy, let's not meet again, or be Snapchat friends. So last night I was on the phone via Bluetooth, yes, those douchey little earpieces, with my mom. At the end of the call, I always like to say, "I love you," to my mom. Well, it turns out, just at that moment, my girlfriend of 3 months came walking in just as I finished my call, and apparently she thought the "I love you" was for her. She immediately started crying tears of joy, jumping up and down, so happy that I had finally come out with my true feelings. Of course, I told her I was on Bluetooth, and that I hadn't actually been talking to her. I also apologized if it might have seemed like I was. Now, she's locked herself away in the bedroom crying, and I don't really know what to do. She's a really great girl, but I'm a bit scared that the relationship is ruined now from this whole situation. Update. Okay, so the story has taken quite a drastic turn, so hold on to your seatbelts, people. My girlfriend locked herself away in my room last night, after I had told her that I was on the phone with my mom. I tried to explain through the door that I cared for her a lot, and that in time I'd surely come to love her. It was just a bit early for me to say it, and I would love to keep spending time with her. Silence from the other side of the door. I went to bed on the couch hoping we could have a talk about it the next morning. Well, I woke up today with her standing over me just staring. She wouldn't say anything. She just stood there and stared. I was a little freaked out, to be honest, so I asked her what was going on. No response. At this point, I was like, okay, maybe she's giving me the silent treatment. So I go to the kitchen to make some coffee and pancakes. Maybe I can win her over with some food. All of a sudden, she starts muttering to herself while still standing at the couch, turning and staring at me. Staring, staring, staring. I'm starting to get a little weirded out at this point. So I tell her, "Hey, I'm calling your mom." She screams, the loudest I've ever heard someone scream. To be honest, it sounded like the blood-curdling screams that people talk about, hearing people about to be murdered. At this point, my heart is pounding. I just about shit my pants, and I ran for my room as she chased behind me. I managed to slam the door shut behind me when she just starts pounding on it, like throwing herself at the door, trying to bust it down. The door is made out of pretty solid wood, so without something like a battering ram, there was no way my tiny 110-pound girlfriend could break it down by herself. Guess what, though? I left my fucking phone in the kitchen in my haste to get the fuck out of Dodge. My only way out was through diplomacy, and this shit was gonna have to be more diplomatic than the United States and Russia during the Cold War. Anyway, she starts crying. Not just any crying either, like crying as if she had just found out she lost her entire family in a horrible car accident. She starts screaming, "Why won't you love me? I've done so much for you. Why don't you love me?" I go to the door and yell back, Just let me talk, okay? Please, you're scaring me." She stops talking. It's silent, aside from the sniffles I can hear through the door. I reiterate that I do care deeply for her, I just need more time to let my feelings grow, and I continue on with that train of thought. She starts screaming again, pounding the door for what felt like an eternity. I screamed back, "I'm not coming out, and there's no way you're getting in. I'll jump out the window to escape if you don't quit it." She runs out the door and slams it shut. I figured it would be some kind of trick to get me out, so I checked the cameras in my home. I have cameras facing my door, and facing my living room and kitchen just in case. Turns out, she really was gone. I rewind the footage from last night. I'm telling you, this shit was psycho. She left my room at 1 a.m., walked to the couch where I was asleep, and just stood there watching over me for 49 minutes. She walked back out into the room. 3 a.m. came around. I'm still asleep. She comes out, watches over me, and at one point puts her face right next to mine, almost touching me nose to nose, and sat there like that for 22 minutes. 5 a.m. rolls around. She runs to the kitchen and grabs a dish rag. No clue why. She stood over me for 2 hours. Yes, 2 whole hours until I woke up, and then my story started as described above. Needless to say, I'm a bit spooked, and I'm not sure this particular relationship will be continuing. I've called her mom to come pick her stuff up, but so far she's MIA. About 2 years ago, I moved into a new apartment. The walls were very thin, and because of fire safety laws in my city, the bedroom had one window which led into the living room and had none with outside access. The window will be important for later. It was 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for the master tenant, and one spare, which at the time was rented out by a very friendly guy. Well, the friendly guy had issues with his work visa and had to move back to Canada last minute, leaving us about 2 weeks to find another roommate. Our quickest and easiest option was Craigslist, of course. Due to my work schedule, I had no part in the selection process, but was content when the new roommate moved in a little while later. He seemed to be a bit off, but he was very friendly. He was a very tall, large guy, but he was pretty quiet. Not someone I wanted to go out of my way to hang out with, but he was okay to be around and be cordial with. About 2 weeks into his move-in, the master tenant left for Hawaii, leaving he and I alone in the home for the month-long duration of his stay. For the first few days, everything was normal. All of a sudden, about 4 days into the trip, I'm woken up at about 8 a.m. to frantic knocking at my door. Roommate, we'll call him Kyle, is standing there when I open up, looking completely frazzled. He looks me dead in the eye and says, "So do you want to tell me what went on last night?" I was shocked and confused because I had come home from work at about 9 p.m. and had immediately showered and gone to bed. I explained this to him, and he tells me that he heard screaming and arguing with someone in my room, that he saw me in the side alley out the window, arguing with our landlord, who I'd never even seen at that point. He had heard people coming in and out of our house. I tell him, no way, none of that ever happened. After staring at me for a little while longer, he leaves, and he never brings it up again. The next morning I wake up to the same thing. This time he says he saw me arguing with my boyfriend. I was single at the time, and had seen me talking with our other roommate, who was away in Hawaii. He also asked me for the badge number of the officer I'd spoken to, since he had apparently seen me talking to a bunch of police as well. This time I get a bit angry. I more or less tell him to cut this shit out, because I'm not doing anything, and I don't know what he's talking about. He gets a weird look on his face and says, "I think I must have had a seizure in my sleep. Sorry, the next time it happens, call an ambulance, please." He leaves for a bit, only to start knocking again about an hour later. When I open up, he repeats the exact same story verbatim. This happens once more before I tell him to leave me the fuck alone, and I leave for work. I go to work as normal. I'm reluctant to return that night, but I'm too tired to switch to an alternate location. Big mistake. At about 1 a.m., I wake up to slamming doors. Kyle is pacing back and forth between his bedroom, the living room, and out the front door, walking in and out of each room, flipping the lights on and off, mumbling angrily and slamming all the doors. I can see his figure pacing back and forth through the frosted window in my room that leads to the living room. Since my room is dark, though, he can't see inside. Suddenly he screams. I can't live like this. Why are you doing this to me? I think he's on the phone and don't respond. A few moments later, though, he screams my name repeatedly, and I realize he's directing it towards me. I knew I had to get the fuck out of there, so I very quietly creep out of bed and start getting dressed and packing a bag of clothes for work in the morning. I'm almost done when he suddenly screams, "I hear you," and charges over to my bedroom. He slapped the wall next to my door, not touching the door itself. I look towards my window and see his shadow lean all the way forward, pressing his ear against the glass. I was terrified, sat completely still and unmoving. He screams my name again and moves away from the window. I hear him start pacing between rooms once more. Now my shoes are kept on a rack outside my door and not inside my room, so I know that when I leave, I'm going to need a moment to put them on. I decide to wait until his pacing takes him out the front door again, at which time I plan to grab my shoes, slip them on, and then run. As I'm formulating this plan, though, the pacing stops. "Do you want to fucking fight about this? Come out right now, and we'll fight, I swear to God." I'm a very small 5-foot girl, and this guy is easily 3 times my size, so I was definitely not looking for a fight, thanks though. After a few minutes, he turns off all the lights, and I hear the door to his room open and close, followed by silence. I wait for a moment to be sure I can't hear any movement, then I decide to take my chance. I took a breath and pulled my door open quickly. I step out and grab my shoes before I look up a second later and see him standing there shirtless, just a pair of boxers and one sock on, in the dark hallway. His arms were hung slightly outward in an awkward position, and he says in a low but calm voice, "Ma'am, we need to talk." That was a hard no from me, so I grab my shoes and run out the door with them in hand. I run about half a block barefoot before I stop to put them on. When I look back, he's standing in the porch light of our front door, watching me run, but never moving. Luckily, I had a friend who lived only 2 blocks away, and I had their spare key as well, so I let myself in and crashed there for the night. And that's where I stayed for the next week or so, while we worked things out with a master tenant, and Kyle agreed to move out within the week. He says he doesn't remember anything that happened, or wasn't sure if it was real or not, but if I said that's what went down, then it must be real. The day Kyle left, he sends me a photo of the house keys sitting on the table. Just says, "I'm out," nothing else. I took a friend over there with me to scout it, and ensure that he had actually left. When we get there, we discover that not only had he left with a ton of food and furniture, but he had ripped all of the fire alarms out of the ceilings. He had unscrewed and removed the deadbolt to the front door, and left them lined up neatly on the front table. We then realized that my front door can only lock by using a key from the outside, and it had been locked when we had arrived, meaning Kyle still had the key. We called a locksmith immediately. Even after changing locks, I was still terrified to stay there alone afterwards. I never went to sleep at night without barricading the doors with chairs and other furniture. To this day, I still fear for his safety. He was obviously psychologically unstable, but I also wonder what could have happened if I hadn't been as lucky as I was. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you liked the video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And if you have any comments about the way I narrate, the way I do my videos, or anything, please be sure to leave it in the comments below, as I could always use feedback on how to make my channel just that little bit better. For those of you who are at all interested about my life at all, the next school semester begins on August the 22nd, so that means it's going to be starting pretty soon, so I'll be going to school. I don't think that's going to affect the schedule at all. I'll still be making videos once every 2 days or so, since I really feel like that schedule is the most comfortable for me, and I really enjoy making videos, and it helps me relax during all this craziness going on. Anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that in case something does affect the schedule, I will let you guys know right away. As always, if you guys want to contact me at all, then please be sure to take a look in the description below. It contains links to all of my social media, including my Gmail, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch accounts. If you guys would like to get a fast response, be sure to message me on either Twitter or Gmail because those are the ones I check most often. I don't check Facebook quite as much, so it might take me a little bit longer to reply to you on there. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the name of the story if it has one, what type of story it is in the tagline if it applies, and also be sure to include how you would like to be credited in the description of the story the video appears in. Please, if you guys send in stories, make sure it's at least a couple of paragraphs long with as much detail as you are comfortable describing, and please make sure it follows basic grammatical etiquette, because sometimes I get stories that are just a little bit too short. They're only about a paragraph or so long, and those take me about 30 seconds to read, so they're just a little bit too short to be put into the videos, unfortunately. As well, I must shout out my friend Alan, who does horror art, and he also does commissions as well, and sells his own merchandise and stuff, and has his art in galleries and everything. Links to all of his social media will be in the description below as well. Be sure to check him out and give him some love because he is a very good personal friend of mine, and he also does some excellent art. If you're curious about the music used in this video, it can always be found in the description below the video in the order which it appears in. I have links to the artists as well. As for the new channel, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with that. I will try to give it a shot this weekend. I was a little bit busy getting ready for school and stuff this semester, so we'll see how that turns out. I still got to decide on mascot and everything for it too. Anyways, I think that's pretty much it, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.